Welcome to this episode of Chatting with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today I got Jack O'Halloran. What's up, Jack?
You got it all, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing great. Things are really good.
Terrific.
Was in a film. I'm taking in your footsteps. Trying to follow in your footsteps a little bit.
A star is born, huh?
Yeah, I'm trying. I'm not trying. I'm doing it,
That's a good way to do it. You got to do it. That's the way to do it.
Yeah, so today I want to talk about how you even got involved with the film industry and what were the steps like. You were a professional boxer at the time.
I'll tell you, it started back in 1967 when I was fighting up in Boston, and I was undefeated. Steve McQueen came up to shoot a picture of Thomas Crown Affair, and he and I became very good friends. We looked after him, made sure he was okay and all. And he said, "Oh man, you have to come down and get on the set." He said, "You got to. I'll put you in the movie. You got to come back to Hollywood, man. We'll have a ball. This is, it's a whole new career you could have." And I said, "I'm undefeated. I'm looking to fight Muhammad Ali, and you want me to quit boxing and come into the movie business? I don't think so." So I turned it down, and then I did fought a guy, Manuel Ramos, who was ranked number 2 in the world, and he was champion in Mexico, and I knocked him out in L.A., and they offered me a picture of the Great White Hope with James Earl Jones, which was the biggest movie in Hollywood. And there was Raymond Patriarca put the deal together with Fox to get me off the streets. It would send me to Spain for 6 months, keep me out of trouble. And I went out and met the producer. They flew me out, and I met the producer, and guy gave me a big song and dance. "Well, you're going to do this, you're going to do that." I said, "Wait a minute. I just knocked out the number 2 heavyweight in the world. I'm in line to fight Muhammad Ali, and you want me to go to Spain for 6 months?" I said, "Well, I thought this deal was already made." He said, "We're going to pay you $1,600 a week," and da da da. That was a lot of money in those days, I guess.
How old were you at the time?
I was. Let me see. It was 1968. I was
Early 20s?
No, I was like 30, 1968. I was born. I was 25.
When did you get into boxing? What year did you start? Did you start early with boxing?
No, I started boxing when I was actually played pro football first. So I was.
You had an amazing career. Who were you playing pro football with?
I was signed with the Jets, but it was in a time. It was in an era. I left school after a year, and the Jets grabbed me right away because I was 280 pounds and ran a 4.6 40.
Yeah, you're a big guy, so.
But I was very quick, and so the Jets grabbed me. But you couldn't at that time in life. You couldn't play pro ball until your class graduated college, and they should still have that rule actually. Too many young kids are getting hurt because they're too young. Their bodies haven't matured yet. So they had a league on the East Coast that was like a farm team for pro sports, and a lot of us played the Christie brothers, and there was a lot of us that were waiting to go up and play in the pros till our class graduated, and we all played in this league on the East Coast. And when it came time for me to play, I went into Eubank. I said, I would like to get down to Philadelphia because I got a lot of friends playing down there. And he said, "Well, you got a home here?" And I said, "Well, I'll give it a shot in Philly. And if it doesn't work out, I'll come up here." And I went down to Philadelphia, and they sold the team that year to a young kid, Jerry Wallman, who was a nice kid. But he hired a coach, Joe Kuharich. And I watched this guy trade a championship football team away in 3 months. Traded Sonny Jurgensen and Tommy McDonald to Washington for Norman Snead, who couldn't play a little bit. Traded great ball players to L.A., to Green Bay. He was just dissipated his team. And I came out of a meeting one day with Timmy Brown, who was a great running back. And said, Kuharich walked right by us. I said, "Well, you don't talk to people?" He said, some kind of grumble. I said, "Take this team and stick it up your ass." And Timmy Brown said, "Why you at it, trade me." And Muhammad Ali had just won the title. So I told some friends of mine in Philly, I said, I can beat that guy. And I wound up in the gym.
Were you fighting a lot back before this
No,
point? Like,
before I had only had a few, but when I was a young kid, I was taught how to fight. And my grandfather was a tough street guy, fight, and he taught me boxing. And I had a few things in the PAL when I was a young kid. And but I couldn't box amateur because I was signed with the Jets. I was a professional athlete. And those days you couldn't do that. You could do it today, but you couldn't do it then. Couldn't if you were a pro, you were a pro. Couldn't box amateur. So I went in the gym and went down to like 235 pounds and got ready. And they had a great trainer, had a great management group who they paid me a lot of money every week to train and started my career. And
what was your first fight like walking into that ring?
first fight was, it was kind of cool. It was up in Reading, Pennsylvania. I knocked the guy out in 30, I think 52 seconds. And the guy was screaming after the fight because I split the whole side of his head open. And he's yelling at his manager. You told me this guy couldn't fight and all this, and it was his first fight, and blah, blah, blah. Look what he just did to me. I laughing like hell. So we went on, and I've had several fights in Philly. And then there was a problem that happened down there, and they put me on a train and sent me up to Boston. Then I fought out of Boston, and that's where I met McQueen, and I had several fights up there, and then I was traveling around the world fighting all over the place, and traveling different states and stuff like that. When I had 16, I was 16-0, and they went to get a physical, and they told me I had a disease called acromegaly, and they couldn't figure out how I could even be boxed. It's a tumor of the pituitary gland. And if your body puts out 10% growth hormone, mine was putting out 150. So it saps your strength and it's supposed to make you depressed and all this jazz. But boxing was a day job for me because I was doing my father's business at night. And I had to have a day job so that I wouldn't have any problem with the feds or anything. So boxing was a great day job. So I boxed all over the place. They ignored the doctors and went ahead and just did what I had to do. And I wound up in California. He called me on the phone one day. He said, "Would you like to fight Kenny Norton?" And I said, "Where?" "San Diego." I said, "When?" They said, "Next week." I said, "Send me a ticket," because we had a lot of indictments against us for union business and stuff, and they were trying to crack down on some craziness. So I got out of town, and that way and Kenny and I had a war. And actually, I could have won the fight. In the ninth round, people were standing on the benches screaming, yelling, because we were toe to toe. It took them 3 times to ring the bell before anybody heard the bell ring. And finally, the referee separated us. And I was going back to my corner, and Norton ran across the ring and hit me behind the head and drove me into the ring post. And the commissioner was sitting right there. And he jumped up. He said, "If you can't continue, you just won the fight on a foul." Foul. I was so angry. I said, "I'll kill this guy." not realizing this is Norton's hometown, and he was owned by 2 billionaires, and they're looking to get him to fight Ali, and had me upset him would have been terrible. So I foolishly went out into the 10th round, and he got a split decision, and because it's where he lived, but I won the city, and I stayed there, and I knocked out a half dozen guys. And I won the California Heavyweight Championship for the guy, Henry Clark, that nobody wanted to fight. And I took the state title off of him. And there was a doctor down there who was a really good guy, a good friend. He said, "Jack," he said, "you got to go to Scripps and get a workup on this acromegaly thing because the disease will kill you. And I don't want to see it. You got to go, or I'm going to take your license away." So I went to Scripps and they did a workup. And
did they have to remove the tumor or anything?
Well, that's what Scripps wanted. Scripps wanted to remove it. But if you did the operation, then you were on hormones the rest of your life, taking pills. You know what I mean? So I said,
Yeah.
that's bullshit. So I reached out to some friends of mine on the East Coast, and there was a doctor up in Mass General in Boston that had a procedure called the cyclotron proton machine, which they use today actually for prostate cancer and it's a great machine. So what it does is it's a laser, but it doesn't burn. It causes an inner explosion of the tumor. So I went up there and had the procedure done, and they whacked it out the first time. Boy, the guy just boom. I was one in 1,000 people that the first time shot on it, it just banged it right out. And they wanted me to, because they had to bolt a thing to my head to bolt me to a machine, so I couldn't possibly move. I had to be perfectly still for them to hit this laser dead on the money. And so I had 4 bolt holes where I drilled.
Right into your skull?
Yeah, they had to bolt this thing, the apparatus to your head. So they told me that I had to stay in the hospital for a week and a half or some jazz like that. But I had signed to fight a guy in Baltimore, Maryland. So I checked out of the hospital, went down. Doctor thought I was insane. He said, "Are you crazy?" He said, "You just had this procedure. You got to let your body acclimate to it." And I went down and fought a guy, Larry Middleton, in Baltimore. I trained 1 day for the fight. It was crazy. I should never have done it. So I blew a fight down in Baltimore. And then I got a phone call from my agent in California, because I did commercials when I was California heavyweight champion. And she called me up and said, they want you to do a movie with Robert Mitchum. And I said, what movie? Farewell, My Lovely. And you got to go up to New York and meet the director, and I think you should do it. And I looked around me, and I had a couple construction companies in South Jersey. And I looked around, I was shooting pool in a bar when she called me. And I said, maybe it's time. So I went up to New York and met this director, and he flew me out to California to do a screen test with Harry Dean Stanton. And I did the screen test, and Mitchum saw the screen test. He said, it's either him or I don't do the movie. So I blame it all on Robert Mitchum. he was great. He became like he was my mentor. He became like a father. He was actually terrific. He arranged for the first day I went to work. He picked me up. They picked him up, then he came and got me, and we had to go all the way downtown to LA, and he had me laughing and telling me jokes and shit. Got down to the set. We got in dressed, and we were going to do the very first shot I ever did. And we're standing at the bottom of a set of stairs, and he said to me, "You read that script, kid?" I said, "Read it." "Man, I know your part, Charlotte Ramping's part, John Ireland. We had a hell of a cast. It was a great cast in the film." I said, I read it cover to cover. He said, "Good, throw it in the trash can." I said, "What?" He said, "Don't let me catch you doing what thousands of people in this town do, acting. Just be yourself." He said, "You've been a gangster all your life. Take yourself, put yourself in this character and walk down the street like you." And then he taught me all the technical aspects of the camera and all that. And when we did the first shot that we ever did, when we finished the first, started moving the cameras around, I looked at him, I said, what's going on here? He said, "You really don't know." I said, "I'm asking you a question." He said, "That's it, kid. That's all there is to this." I said, "That's all there is to this stuff?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Man, I'm a star."
Yeah, because you think it's so much more, right? Before you get it.
That became the tagline on the film. And the first day I was working, I had to do a pickup shot, and he had left. So I said to myself, how the hell am I going to get home? If Mitchum left, I came with him. How am I going to get home? So I go down to the carpool place, and he's standing beside the car, smoking a cigarette, talking to the driver. And I said, "Wow, man," I said, "I thought you already went home already." He said, "Couldn't go home without the star. Now could I?" Mitchum was great. He was probably the most well-read man I ever met. He was terrific. And Farewell, My Lovely was a great film. I mean, I actually could have probably gotten nominated for supporting actor in the picture. He set up a meeting with Johnny Carson and at the Polo Lounge. And I went to meet John, and he said, "Boy," he said, "if you come on my show, I'm going to get you nominated." because I think the film's a great film. And I said, well, I thought about it for a minute. I said, your show's live, isn't it? He said, yeah. I said, I don't think I could do it. He said, why? Why? I said, well, because I'm going to come out on your show and you're going to ask me about my father and I'm going to ask you where the men's room's at. He said, you would get up and leave? I said, yeah. I don't talk about my father. I don't want anybody talking about him. And you have to understand, I had just come off the streets to do this picture, you know.
Especially back then, it was a
And I didn't
different
want anybody,
time.
you know, then you're on national television. He said, well, we'll arrange the questions for you. I said, John, you're the number one news reporter in the country. You have Albert Anastasia's son sitting on your set, and you're not going to ask me about my father. Do I look like I fell off a turnip truck? And I got up and I said, I really appreciate the offer, but thanks, but no thanks. And I left and Mitchum screamed at me, why, are you crazy? He said, Hollywood loves that kind of stuff. They ate that up. What's the matter with you? I said, Robert, you got a big mouth. You told this guy everything about me. And he said, Jack, this is Hollywood. This is not, you know, I said, there's so many years. And that was a foolish mistake. But, you know, you don't cry over spilled milk.
Looking back, though, would you have done it now?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'd have done it in a heartbeat. That was a dumb mistake. I could have won an Oscar. Because it's a great, I don't know, if you never saw Farewell My Lovely, you should look at it. It's a great film. It really is a good movie.
I'm going to check it out.
And it worked for me terrifically. I mean, Mitchum and I it was great chemistry. It really worked well. So then I did King Kong, and I did start doing one good movie after another. And,
so right after Farewell My Lovely is King Kong right away after?
Did King Kong. As soon as Farewell come out, I was offered King Kong. And then I was, then I think, let me see what I did. King Kong, and I did The Baltimore Bullet with Jimmy Coburn and Omar Sharif and Bruce Boxleitner's first picture. And I just went on and did one picture after another. And I did a few television. I really liked TV, but the first picture television thing I did was Cannon, Bill Conrad. And he was good friends with Mitchum. And Mitchum called me on the phone. He said, Bill Conrad wants you to do that show with him. I said, Rob, that's television. He said, do it. I said, okay. So I did. You know, but when I turned down The Great White Hope, I was leaving the Fox studio, and James Earl Jones was coming up the steps when I was walking down, and he stopped me and he said, you're Jack O'Halloran. And I said, yeah, you're James Earl Jones. He said, is it true what I just heard about you? I said, I don't know. What'd you hear? He said, I heard you just told Hollywood to take the biggest movie out here and stick it. I said, well, I guess you could say that. He said, I got to shake your hand. Never met anybody that did that before. And we became pretty good friends. He was a good guy. I like James.
So once you start into the movie career, are you meeting a lot of actors? Who's some of the memorable people that you met that put an impact on you?
When I did Farewell My Lovely, we had Charlotte Rampling, John Ireland, Harry Dean Stanton, Anthony Zerbe, who's a brilliant actor. It was a great cast. So and Stallone had a small part in the movie. In fact, Stallone came out with a guy named Joe Spinelli. Joe Spinelli was an actor in New York, and he brought like 4 actors out to fill out different character roles, you know. And Stallone was one of them. And he was writing a boxing movie, and he sat down and picked my brain every day about boxing. And I was the gangster fighter from Philadelphia I was signed to fight Ali 4 times. And he just kept talking to me about fights and boxing and everything else. And he wrote the story Rocky. That was my life he wrote about.
Wow.
He'd never been to Philadelphia. He was no gangster. He was a punk kid. So then I just laughed like hell. But
where was Stallone from?
He lived in Florida. He went to school in Switzerland. His mother was married to a wise guy. And he was educated over in Switzerland. His mother lived down in Florida. And he was originally from New York, I think, but he didn't, you know, his mother, like I said, mother married a wise guy. moved down to
Yeah.
Florida. He went to school, and so he asked me all about the unions and waterfront and everything else. And next thing I know, he's doing a movie called Rocket, and made me laugh like hell.
He didn't ask you to be a part of that one?
No, no, wow. He was no.
You could have been the Russian guy or something, right?
Well, but just I was too busy. I was working all the time and doing. And when you like I did, the Baltimore Bullet had Omar Sharif, who's a fantastic guy. Jimmy Coburn was a hell of a guy, and we had a lot of great talent I worked with.
Yeah.
And then I did Hero and the Terror with Chuck Norris. And, well, I had a lot of fun. Then we did Superman and became iconic actors. Superman 1 and Superman 2 were they're iconic films. I mean, here we are 40-some years later, and it's still big time movie. You know what I mean?
It's huge. It's probably one of the biggest movies of all times.
Yeah, so it worked out really well. And when the Donner cut came back out, and they had, which is better than the Lester cut. And so it's the memorabilia is there, and now I wrote a couple books. I'm getting ready to make a mini series with Family Legacy, and everybody's excited about that. So it's been a great ride. I've met a lot of good people. I worked with. I mean, you work with Brand. We did Superman. You had Brando. Terrence Stamp was the hottest. Was one of the best actors in London. If you ever watched Superman 1 and where they had when we're on trial and all those people saying guilty, 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 you had some of the greatest English actors doing a cameo. Harry Anderson, Trevor Howard. I mean, some great actors that took part in the Superman movie just to do a cameo.
It's wild.
You know what I mean?
So how was your life? How did it change after you were featured in Superman? Was it a lot different from before?
Well, no, I had already put myself into the film business, and I had written a great script when I was doing King Kong. I wrote a great script. There was a movie that was done in the 30s called The Informer. Victor McLaughlin and John Ford directed it, and it won 4 Oscars. It was a great story. And the writer of the book, Liam O'Flaherty, and I became friends, and he told me the original story. And I wrote a great script. And I wrote a song called Ballad of a Simple Man, and Elton John recorded it as the song he recorded was Simple Man. And we're going to use it for the film. And I was going to do the film, and because I was going to do the McLaughlin role. It was an Oscar shot. It's great. It's a great script. I'm still going to wind up doing it, I think. And it's so I didn't have an agent when I did Farewell, My Lovely, and after it came out, I went over to Mitchum's house and I said, I think it's time I get an agent. And he pointed to the phone book. I said, what's the deal? He said, the phone book's full of agents. He said, if you think I'm going to give you an agent and he doesn't work out for you and you're going to get mad and come back and yell at me.
Yeah, like he's going to be responsible, right?
So I got this guy, Meyer Mishkin, who represented Lee Marvin and Richard Dreyfuss and a lot of people. I went to see him and he wasn't signing anybody. And Lee Marvin said, if you don't take this kid on, I'm going to leave the agency. He's a hell of an actor. So I wound up with Meyer Mishkin and I went to Mitchum and I said, well, I'm signed up with Meyer Mishkin. He said, it couldn't be a better guy. Just a great guy for you. I said, well, he could have helped me out and told me that in the first place. And, they came to me to do the Bond movie and I turned it down. I was doing a picture called March or Die down I was doing a picture called March or Die down in Spain with Gene Hackman and Catherine Deneuve and Max von Sydow, Ian Holm. Great cast. It's a great war epic picture and Foreign Legion movie. And when I was doing that, they came to me to do the Bond movie. I just signed to do March or Die, and I said, well, told my agent, I said, well, we just signed to do March or Die. And I said, well, we can get out of that picture if you want to go and do this Bond picture. They really want you. Cubby Broccoli flew over from LA, and they begged me to please do the picture. And I said, I just signed to do a picture, and Hackman's a good guy, and blah, blah, blah. And it's a good thing I did, because when I was down there doing that picture, we were offered Superman. And Gene and I went up to London to meet Richard Donner. And Donner said to me, how do you feel about doing a mute guy? Because the character, Nan, was a major scientist, and they lobotomized him because he was hanging around with Zod. So that was his punishment. And I said, I embrace it. He said, what are you talking about? I said, well, Jackie Gleason was a friend of mine, and he did a picture called Gigo, and he won an Oscar for playing a deaf, dumb mute. I said, if I ever got a chance to do a role like that, I would embrace it, to be able to use body language and facial expression. And I said, this is a perfect role, because General Zod is a vicious general. Sarah, who played Ursa, was a man-eater. Somebody had to portray a child, because it's a children's movie. So I said, I'm going to take this big brutish guy and play him like a child, learning how to work my eyes and learning how to do things. And he said, wow, what a great idea. And so it worked out very well. And I did the character Nan, like a child, that and it related to children, related to young kids. I mean, there's so many people come up to me at Comic-Cons and stuff and say, God, your character scared to death of me, but I love your character, because I was like a child acting,
Yeah.
And it worked out very well.
And you're like, thank you. And they're like, you can talk. Oh my God.
Somebody actually said that to me.
Yeah.
First time I went to a Comic-Con, I was sitting there, and a guy came up and he started rapping, blah, blah, blah. And I said, wow, thanks for coming. He said, you can actually talk? I said, must have done a hell of a job, boy. You believe that I really didn't have a voice.
So what was it like being on the set? Is there any stories you have from being on the Superman set?
Oh, God, there's so many stories, man. You're talking about, you're working with people for 3 years. You become like a family, it was, and you're talking about a monster cast. Valerie Perrine was super. Sarah was young, but she was such a great, she's still a great friend. Terrence Stamp was the hottest actor in England when he was younger. There was a picture of Kid Bud or something. He was a good-looking kid, boy. And then his brother managed the Who, the rock and roll group, and Terrence got into sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And then he went to India and he got rolfed and cleaned himself up. And Superman was the first movie he did afterwards. They did Priscilla, Queen of Death. Terrence is a great actor. But we had a lot of fun. I mean, it was watching Brando was unbelievable. Brando was like Mitchum. Actors like that, when they come on a set, you could hear a pin drop. Everybody's paying strict attention. And they're class acts, because they say hello to everybody in the morning, and then they say goodnight at night when they're leaving. And it's young kids today don't do that. There's some don't show up, they're late and all this. The older actors never missed a day. They never missed a time frame. They were supposed to be there at 6 o'clock in the morning. They were there at 6. Even if they were out drinking all night, they'd be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They just, I was on Robert liked to drink a little bit. But if he come on a set, they just threw some Visine in each one of his eyes, and he was off running. And he never missed a line, never missed a cue. So working with people that were that skilled, and that, Hackman was a great actor. You learn from people like that. And it just got easier and easier and easier. But Mitchum was you couldn't get a better teacher than Robert Mitchum. When I was doing Farewell, My Lovely, we did it off the Goldman studio lot. And I was in the production office one morning, and I come out, and the editor was an Oscar winner, and he was editing the picture, and his office was right by the gate as you leave. And he stopped me. He said, "You're Jack Lauer?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm sitting here cutting this picture." He said, "This is the first movie you ever done?" I said, "Yeah, this is it." He said, "Well, I'll tell you what, kid, I've edited a lot of pictures. I'm sitting here editing these pictures. You're going to be a big star." So I went to Mitchum and I said, "Wow, man." I told him what this guy told me. I said, "Maybe I should, go to UCLA or go to some acting school and take some lessons or something like that." And he laughed like hell. He said, "They'll ruin you or you'll ruin them." He said, "Stick with me, kid, and you'll fart through silk. Don't worry about a thing." It's,
Yeah,
Mitchum
you
was,
just be
Mitchum was,
yourself, right? You don't have to put on
no,
I've noticed that a lot of shows and movies I
no,
see
you just take the
seem like
character,
they're
you stick them in
trying.
yourself and
Yeah.
just whatever character you're going to do, you just take that character, you just put him in you and you just be you. And it works out very well. I just, my whole career, I just, you know, people, and I've worked with some great actors, Jeffrey Bridges uh, and Jessica. Jessica, you knew she was going to be a star the day she walked on the set. But we did King Kong, and Jeff Bridges was a method actor, so it would take him a half hour to get all pumped up into what he was going to do. And, it just used to make me laugh because people get so worked up in the character they're going to do. And I just found that to be I didn't have to do that. So
Have you
uh,
found anybody to be hard to work with?
not really, no, no, never. I picked and choose everything that I did. A couple things I wish I would have done. I had a picture with Eastwood. I would have liked to have done that. I turned down 5 pictures, and Richard Keel did all 5, made his career. I had a picture with Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor that we had a break in Superman, in King Kong, where they went to New York to shoot the ending of the picture. So we were sitting, and I was hanging out at the beach every day. It was kind of cool. So they offered me a picture up in Seattle, Washington with Wilder and Pryor. Paramount wanted me to do it really badly. And the producer for King Kong said, you can let him go, but he's got to come back to finish the movie. And the time frame would have worked out pretty well. And I was sitting at the beach, and I said, "Well, why should I leave the beach? I'm having a good time." And I
You're like,
should have done that. I wish I'd have done the movie because Pryor was a good guy, and Gene Wilder was brilliant. So it was, but I just didn't want to get into doing these dumb roles.
yeah.
The Bond movie was to me was a big dumb role. And I remember when Cubby and them came to my agent, and he was sitting in my agent's office, and I was around the corner at a restaurant with Mitchum. That was his birthday, and I was getting him loaded. And I said, "I got to go around the corner and meet these guys. They came from London to see me." He said, "For what?" I said, "They want me to do this James Bond picture." He said, "You read the script?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You like it?" I said, "Not really." He said, "Tell him to go to hell." He was Mitchum was a trip.
So
So
where
I walked around the corner and I said, "Yeah, I got to do this picture, March or Die." I already signed to do it, and I can't go back on my word. Dick Richards was the director who directed Farewell, My Lovely. So
what member what character did they want you to play?
in March or Die,
No, in 007.
they wanted me to play the guy with the teeth.
Oh yeah, yeah, with the metal teeth,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Did you notice Kanye West has these metal teeth, and he talked about you?
No, they know that. Richard Keel did the part. He was a little bit taller than I was. But it was like a walk on villain guy. And I don't know. I just didn't. So it worked out much better because I did Superman.
Did you guys have a good relationship, you and Richard Keeler?
Yeah, Richard was a nice guy. We met him a few times at Comic Cons and stuff. Richard was a good guy. His wife, here's a guy who was like 7'2". His wife was like 5 foot.
Yeah. I mean, you guys are abnormally tall.
Well, I was only 6'6". I'm 7'2" is a little
Yeah,
bit.
that's like a whole foot on you, right?
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Make you look small. You're like, hey man.
I mean, Mitchell was about 6'2", 6'3". We had a lot of fun. I enjoyed working with him. It was good.
So did you get typecasted with your roles? Were you always the villain, or did you look to play other roles?
God, good question. I wasn't a villain in King Kong. King Kong was a foreman of an oil crew, and Baltimore Bull was a villain here in the yeah. Most of the villains, yeah,
Yeah.
which worked out. And I did some television things that were they were all villains. Perry Mason show and did Murder She Wrote. Did some great TV shows. Angela Lansbury, she was great to work with. She was a
Yeah.
really nice lady. I liked her a
You've been
lot.
on a lot of iconic movies and shows like
Yeah, I'm very lucky in my career. I mean,
Dragnet. Dragnet was huge.
Dragnet was a great movie. Dan Aykroyd and Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
You could see Dragnet 50 times and you would still not get all the one-liners that Danny Aykroyd threw out.
Yeah.
He walked around with an earpiece with Jack Webb's voice going in his ear all the time. And that was Tom Hanks' breakout movie. So, and they had a great cast. Christopher Plummer was in it. It was, God, we had a good time doing it. Dragnet was fun.
Where was that one filmed? In
In
LA,
LA.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Filmed right in LA.
So any funny stories from that time?
No, it was a good set. We had a good set, and we had again, you're working with really good actors. And Danny Aykroyd was a hell of a guy, and Tom's a nice fella. So we had all the Playboy bunnies. It was a trip. Yeah, we had a good time.
That was
Director
back
was a
when
good
they
guy, Tom Mankiewicz. Huh?
yeah, that was back when they had the Playboy
Mansion.
the restaurant too up in Chicago, right?
Well, they had that in Chicago. They had restaurants all over the place.
Yeah.
We filmed in LA. They had the Playboy Mansion was in LA.
How was that? I was going there.
I don't know, man. I can't remember.
What happens at the Playboy Mansion stays at the Playboy Mansion, right?
Some stories you don't kiss and tell,
Yeah.
But it was good. It was a good film. It worked out well. That's it's when you're working with. I mean, like I said, I worked with a lot of really serious, very good actors, and yeah. But I blame it all on Robert Mitchum.
Yeah. So when you're not acting, right, and you're just living the nightlife or whatever's going on, is there any memorable situations that stand out in your mind?
Well, it's just I think writing the book and stuff has created a lot of stirred up a lot of people. And there's a lot of old timers and friends of mine that come from that world that want to tell the truth now about a lot of things that happened. When I first wrote the book, they said, "Well, God, aren't you worried, man? People are going to retaliate against you and all this other jazz." I said, "Well, few have tried, a few have died, and I'm still sitting here talking to you." So, no, I wasn't worried. And it turned out to where everybody actually embraced it, and they would rather. They'd like to see the truth come out. There's so much fiction that, Hollywood takes liberties with a lot of things, making movies about organized crime and stuff that the stories are fantasy,
Yeah.
Like they did The Irishman. The Irishman was done, and Frank Phelan never killed Hoffa, and he never shot Joey Gallo. But because no one ever proved who did, Hollywood took advantage of a guy who Frank Fallon, I knew him. He was from Philadelphia. And he was a driver for Russell Buffalino, who was in Pennsylvania. Russell was one of the strongest political dons in the country, tied into Washington. And his cousin Billy was a lawyer. And Frank Fallon was a driver for him. They wrote a book called We Paint Houses. And yeah, he whacked a couple people, but nothing like that they put in The Irishman. So
They tried to spin it and make it.
well, they tried to make it that they told the truth about what happened to Hoffa and Joey Gallo, and when he got shot in a restaurant. Phelan didn't do either, and they made it believe that he did, and just like I said, Hollywood taking liberties on things, and so it's time to come out and tell the truth. And people, especially with the Kennedy thing, everybody's dying to know what really happened. Now they're coming out. All of a sudden, there's books coming out, people coming out saying that there were so many shots fired that day, and they're talking about the Greer shot and all that stuff. And one guy is saying that Greer shot Connally and Kennedy twice, and that's bullshit. The only person he shot was Kennedy, and that was the last shot that was taken.
And there was the Fall Guys, and it was a pretty intricate thing.
Well, right? There was so many stories and so many lies told about it. And the whole Warren Commission was total bull. That was made up about the one bullet theory, and they made Oswald a patsy, and he wasn't even in the building. And there was so many proofs that he wasn't even in the building. There was a jail right across the street from the Byrd building, and the guy's sitting there looking right at the window that Oswald supposedly shot Kennedy from. And the rifle that was used is no way that they could shoot 3 shots in 28 seconds with any kind of accuracy.
A little $10 rifle from a catalog, right?
Yeah, it was from a catalog, right? So
Sears.
The whole thing was just far-fetched, you know what I'm saying? So it was well planned out. The guy who did it and who planned it was the first hit that he ever did in America. He was notorious in Europe. And they just, so it's time to tell the truth about a lot of things. So that's why Family Legacy is going to work out very well.
So where were you in your life when you found out that Kennedy was killed? Do you remember that day and that moment?
I was there.
Oh, you were in Dallas
that day.
Oh,
I was there.
I didn't know you were in Dallas that day.
Oh no, I was there. I was at Murchison's house the night before. They had a party called Egyptian Nights, and it was for Hoover. Hoover was a guest of honor, and Clint Murchison Jr. owned the Dallas Cowboys in the stadium they played in. His father was the wealthiest guy in the world, and Meyer Lansky arranged for me to go. I was on the premise that I was going to play for the Dallas Cowboys. And that was my entree. And I met a lot of people who were at this party, including a guy who was the head of banking in New York. And there were 4 presidents there. And there was just a lot of serious people. So it was an education. I went there for an education.
Yeah.
And I watched Johnson come in after Kennedy had landed. Johnson came back to the party about 11:30 at night, and they all went into a room, and I left. And I was supposed to leave Dallas, but I stayed. And I was out running the next morning, and Johnny Roselli was running. I ran right past Johnny Roselli, and he's a hitter from Chicago. And he said, "You're not supposed to be here. What are you doing here?" And I said, "Oh, I just thought I'd hang around a little bit." So I was there at Dealey Plaza when all that shit went on.
Wow.
We had 13 shots fired that day. It was all bull. They said it was a one bullet theory. It was a total fallacy. And the car had several bullet holes in it. So they took the car right away to New Orleans to get fixed so that no one would ever see the bullet holes so they could collaborate their stories.
And how many people were shot that day?
How many people were shot?
Yeah, wasn't one of the passengers shot too?
Well, Conley got shot.
Right?
Conley got shot Connolly got shot, and Kennedy got shot 3 times. Got shot in the lower back, got shot in the throat, and then he got shot in the top of his forehead, blew his head out in the back.
One bullet did all that. It did a circle.
No.
No, that's what they thought, right? That was the
Yeah,
one
but
bullet theory.
from the window where they were talking about, the car was already down Dealey Plaza. If they'd have shot him from the window, it would have been, they'd have hit him in the back of his head, it would have come out the front. You understand? Yeah. So it was impossible for what they were talking about that happened. And it just, and the one bullet went through part of, he had a hole in his neck, and they covered that up with a tracheotomy. They said, that they did a bum job on it. And his autopsy was done by a bunch of interns. And they put a body on a plane, they flew him to Washington. But the key to the thing was his brother Bobby was his brother's second skin his whole political career. 4 people went to see Bobby before Jack went to Texas and told him, do not let your brother go to Texas. The animosity down there is horrendous. One of them was Adlai Stevenson. And Adlai Stevenson said, I was just in Washington, people were spitting at me and all this other stuff. Bobby didn't go before, he wasn't there during, and he never went afterwards.
Because he knew.
They knew that Jack was going to, and Jack Kennedy, there's another thing that nobody ever talked about. Jack Kennedy wasn't going to live out his political career. He was dying of diseases. He had Addison's disease, he had syphilis, he had 2 other diseases. They used to shoot him up every day just for him to walk around. So his father would have rather seen him die the way he died than to die with a medical problem and put a mark on the family.
Yeah.
And you could say that's kind of cold, but look what he did to his daughter. He lobotomized his daughter. Rose sat in an institution all her life, looking out a window.
So after that happened, right, after the assassination, what was the mood like in the country? And
it was heart-rending. You're talking about Jack was a hell of a politician. I like Jack Kennedy. Jack Kennedy was a good politician, but he died for the sins of his father. And it was just it was a terrible mood in the whole country that the president of the United States being shot on television like that, And they played it up with the kids going to the funeral and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And Jackie and it was just was a black era for the country.
And then they say that they have his brain in a jar somewhere
in the museum,
right? Yeah, like how do they have his brain if you watched it go out of his head in the video?
It just shows you the farce of the people, bullshit. They tell so many stories and everybody bites into it, man. It's just, so it's time to tell the truth and put things straight.
I heard people don't want to hear the truth because it's going to be so shocking.
Well, there's people that are really dying to know the truth, and they know that there's been blurps about this. Now there's all kind of books coming out. People are saying, oh well, there's one guy who was on the car behind Kennedy's car, and he was a Secret Service guy. And now he's come out writing a book saying that he knows there were 3 shots fired. Well, there were 13 shots fired, but he's talking about there were 3 now that he knows distinctively. So the one bullet theory goes out the window right there. And you have a dozen different people talking about writing books about this part of it and that part of it, and all of it's just theory, And
is there film that hasn't been released of that day?
There's a Bruder film, but that's been released now by the FBI and shows Greer shooting, putting the last shot in.
Yeah,
they originally cut 8 frames out of the film. The film, Zapruder shot that film. That film was sold to Life magazine for $150,000 before it was ever shot. They bought the film, and it didn't show for a year. And they cut 8 frames out of it. And the 8 frames were the frames where the driver turned and took the last shot. But then they put them back in. They found out there was a copy going around. So the FBI all of a sudden said, oh my God, we got to show the original. And so so there's Then I thought I sent you that.
Yeah, I did. I seen it. I was like, wow. You can see the whole thing. It's clear as day. I can't play it on YouTube, but I can put it on another platform and you can see it. Yeah, they won't let you play things like that. It's too graphic.
Well,
What do you think of Robert F. Kennedy, the nephew?
hold on one second. Hold on a second.
Here, I'll pause it. So, what do you
But,
think of Robert F. Kennedy running for president?
oh, I understand he's a nice young man, but I think his life is in jeopardy if he does.
No, he is. He is running for president,
I
and
think his life is in jeopardy if he were to win the thing, which I don't think he has a chance of doing. But if he were to win it, I think his life is in jeopardy. But that's, who knows?
they won't give him Secret Service protection.
They won't.
No.
Well, he's
one of the only presidential candidates to not receive Secret Service protection.
I didn't know that. I didn't read that.
And there's been a lot of threats on his life and different
well,
things.
It's going to be the untold story about why first Joe, then Jack, then Bobby, and then the disgraced Teddy. No one's ever told the truth about why all that happened. And we're about to do that in Family Legacy. And they made a statement that another Kennedy would never, ever walk on the White House steps again. So if the young man if he were lucky enough to win, I think his life would be in jeopardy. I really do.
And why did the plane crash, Bobby Kennedy, right? Was it Bobby Kennedy that the
No,
plane?
it was Jack Jr.
Jack Jr.
John Jr.
Wasn't there something on the plane?
No, he was going to take his mother's memoirs and go to Hollywood and make a movie. His mother never said a word about anything she saw or whatever, but she kept a great diary. And after she passed away, her son got the hold of the diary. And he had owned G magazines. He had a magazine of his own. And he decided to go to Hollywood and make a picture out of his mother's diary. And he and his girlfriend, he wasn't qualified to fly an instrument plane. It was a stormy night. He was stoned out of his brains. They were 4 hours late showing up to take off. They should have never let him take off that airport. And the plane was digged anyway to blow. So, the accident happened. He died. End of story. No one's ever found the diary yet. And no movie was made. So another Kennedy died. And that girl had to die with him. That was tragic.
Yeah, they say it's the Kennedy curse, right?
Well, it was more than a curse. It's a reality. I mean, it's like Teddy. Teddy let that poor girl drown. The car was rigged so that when he took a turn, the wheel came off and went right into the lake. But he could have walked 100 feet to a firehouse and got help to get her out of the car. And he went home, took a shower, and went to bed.
Yeah, he didn't say anything. He just left the car there.
Left her die. And the family paid the family off. And there's, it's just a state of, and it's so disgraced him, he'd never be president after that. So they didn't have to kill him. He was already disgraced.
Yeah, it's pretty wild stuff. So where can people get your book? And
Amazon. There's a new book coming out, and they're going to publish it worldwide in all languages. So it's going to be good. The mini series is going to be great, and it'll coincide with the new book, and it's going to be good. We're going to have a lot of fun.
When did you write the book, Family Legacy?
10 years ago. Wrote it a long time ago. Waited for a few people to pass away because I didn't want them to be hassled. So we wrote it, and it's been a bestseller ever since. It's been a 5-star book on Amazon ever since it was written. But they never published it the way they promised me they were going to publish it. So this time I'm going to take total control and we'll publish it in all languages around the world because it's an international story. And it'll work well that way. And the miniseries will do extremely well. And I was going to do a film and then do a sequel, but there's too much information to put into one movie. So we're going to do a miniseries, 8-episode miniseries. And then I'll write 2 more books I'm in the process of doing right now. And bring it up to modern day and just Bob's your uncle. Either do another miniseries or just do a continuing series.
Yeah, you don't want to leave big chunks out of all this information that you have in the book. But if you wrote a movie, you would have to do that.
Well, you can only put so much in a couple hours, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
doing a miniseries is a lot better deal.
Definitely. Does it surprise you on how much the world has changed since you were younger?
It's unbelievable. We have such a great country. And the problem is people have to stand up and vote. They've got to come back and take their country back. They're being led by the nose. And people sit and watch television every night watching the news, thinking that they're getting all the truth of what's going on, and they don't get half the truth. They get what they're told, what people want them to know. And it's just very sad. Because we have, Americans are funny people. Usually, if you push them against the wall, then they come out fighting. And that hasn't happened yet. And it's just, I have great empathy for the younger generation that are being born right now. And watching these kids, I mean, you see kids standing across the room in the same room, texting each other instead of walking over and saying, "Hey, how you doing, man?" Looking somebody in the eye and understand who you're talking to. Everybody's on the social media, texting people back and forth, and they don't know who they're even talking to. So that's why so many people are being exploited. So it's, it's got to be a shakeup, boy. We need to get a president in there that's going to shake this country back to where it belongs.
Yes, so it's really sad. The whole social media and people are losing their social.
Well, they don't.
Socialism.
People don't talk to each other. They text each other.
Yeah.
It's so foolish. I mean, why? You're in a room and somebody's on the other side of the room and you're texting them. Why not walk over and shake their hand? Say, "Hey, how are you? Well, who are you?" Look them in the eye. I mean, God, the word that's missing out of our society is the word respect.
100%. Definitely.
When I was a kid, you were taught respect from day one. You respected your elders. You respected, it was just a way of life. Hey, they don't have that today.
Did you find that changed when you went to Hollywood? Were people?
Not when I first went out there. I just, things started changing after in the 80s and stuff, started getting, and I lived all over the world. I lived in Belgium. Belgium was a great place to live. And now it's very socialistic. The Isle of Man was a great place to live. Ireland was great. There were places that were really terrific to stay and live in, and watching the changes in them has been horrendous. Very sad.
Yeah, it is.
Very sad.
Well, I thank you, man, for coming on. I really appreciate it. I love talking to you. You have a wealth of information. People love hearing your stories. And
well, it's been good to see you, pal.
Yeah, you too. I always enjoy this.
You take care of yourself.
Yeah, and make sure you go check out his book, Family Legacy. You can get it on Amazon. I'll leave a link in the description of this video. You have a website to go along with it too, right?
Yeah. Some great stuff out there.
Yeah, I'll put a link in the description, and you guys can check it out. If you like Jack's book, get a copy. Do you sell signed copies?
Yeah. Well, if they mail them to me or something, we're going to be doing a whole book tour on this new book coming out. So,
are you doing any Comic-Con soon?
Just did one in Indiana. I think
man.
one coming up in Boston.
Yeah, let me know when you're coming to Boston. I'll meet you up there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I need to get a one of them action figures signed from you.
All
Yeah, it'll be cool.
right, brother. You take care of yourself.
Definitely. If you guys like this content, hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can get my videos every time they drop. And if you don't like this content, too bad. Start your own podcast. Thanks, Jack.